Alright, so this is the picture of Pennywise that we're going to be doing. And notice it has a painterly-like quality. That's another one I did. This is with Copic markers. So this is how I get that painterly look with Copic markers. I'll be going through an actual real-time lesson on how to do that. But one trick that I like to do is in here I'm covering the entire face in a light gray color. The reason why I'm doing that is because I don't want any of the colors to be too saturated. So here, even notice the nose, I'm going over with another layer, and then I'm starting to, block in the parts that I want to be darker. And even where the red is going to be, I'm still putting a darker layer of gray. Now notice, as you keep layering down the pen, it'll get darker and darker until it finally reaches its saturation point of darkness. For those who don't know what Copic markers are, they're awesome markers. They have I'm using a the paint tip. That's right there is a blender brush. This allows you to blend out the well, it's a blender, I guess, not brush, but anyway, they have brush tips. They're kind of like brushes, but anyway, it's a pen. But that's just the blender one, which has no color. So now notice when I add the red, it's a lot more desaturated than it would be if I would just put it right in the paper, because I laid down this layer, or actually two layers of gray. And if I want it even more desaturated, I can come back in, like right now, with the darker gray. And as I add in this darker gray, and I'm not doing it everywhere, just certain parts, it desaturates it. And I can go back in and I can desaturate it more. Now adding different colors together, like for example, there I added gray, now I'm adding blue inside the mouth, is how you get that painterly look. You want to, especially with, like I'll show in the hair and stuff, you want to especially use colors that are on opposite sides of the color wheel. So colors that are similar, like let's say a bunch of flesh tones, would give you a very cartoony look. Whereas if you add other colors, and it's different. For example, here let's look at the nose. If I and I already have a gray laid down, and that's in a mix with the red right now, that makes the red look less saturated. So if you wonder how people get that kind of desaturated look, that's one way you can do it at least. But now I'm going to use a color on the opposite side of the color wheel than red. That is a cool color. So you have warm colors, you have cool colors. This color here is a cool color, a light blue color. But when it goes on top of the red, you notice that it kind of creates almost a brownish, kind of purplish color. It's kind of hard to see, with the camera, but in person it's really, really nice looking. And this is how I add the shadow into the red rather than using just a darker red. If I were to just use a darker red, I'd get a very cartoonish, very vibrant, very bright look. If that's the look that you're going for, it's fine. Now I go ahead and blend it out with the blending pen, which is basically just the alcohol inside of a pen with no ink. Now I'm going in right now, I'm adding some very, very light blue. Now the reason why I'm doing this is because nothing white is purely white, and it's not just gray, right? So even though he has this like white makeup on, you have to keep in mind that that white makeup is going to pick up ambient lighting, it's going to pick up reflective lighting, different colors that are around. And now I want to use my gray pen again to go right over that blue, because I don't want the blue to be too pronounced. I just want a little bit of blue in there. But anyway, you can add all kinds of colors depending on what kind of colors are surrounding. You could add, some of the hair color in there by using some skin tones maybe. Let's say the light was green. You obviously would have to put green in there, things like that. In this case, the lighting is pretty normal, so I don't add a whole bunch of color variation into the skin. Now notice here I'm adding this kind of like light purple color all where I want the shadows to be. And this is because color variation is how you get that painterly look. If you don't add the color variations into your piece, then it's going to look very cartoonish. And if you do this like with digital painting, or even painting with like acrylic, something like that, you'll get a kind of muddy look, and you're wondering, why does my paintings not look right? They look muddy or whatever. Or why does my Copic markers, look so basic or cartoonish? And that'd be why it's a lack of color variation. And when I do the Copic, like how I work with Copic markers, the actual real-time tutorial, I'm going to be showing specifically one on flesh tones, you know, how I get the flesh tones that I get, and how to do flesh tones. Now here I kind of felt like maybe I took the grays maybe in this, you know, the light's kind of coming from the bottom and from the, there's some light coming from behind them, which is like you know, the backlighting. There's some light coming from on top a little bit, but most of the lighting is coming from below, which is why you have the nose lit up the way I have it lit up and everything, and the underplanes of all the eyes and stuff, and the underplanes of the cheeks are lit up, which looks really cool. But I think I might have just taken that part, made it just a little bit too dark. Now I can always bring it back, so it's not too big of a deal. I can go over it with Prismacolor pencils and just find a color that's similar but lighter, and so I can go in there and lighten it up a little bit, and then you know, if I wanted to do that, and then add a little bit more detail into the shading so you can see more of the maybe wrinkles in the skin and stuff. Here I'm zooming in just so you can kind of see kind of what I'm doing here, and you kind of see the variations, and then I can come back in with gray again if I want to blend it out some more. But right now I'm doing the eyes. I wanted to show, so you start out with the mid-tone, and then I do a slightly darker, and this makes it look like the eyes are glowing, and then I'm going to use my uni ball pen, which is basically whiteout pen, and I add the white highlights around the inside. So you go from light to dark, but you want to do it backwards with the pens, except for the white, because the white goes over everything else. I add some white right there into the lips, and that's how you get that. You want to make anything look like it's glowing, that's how you do it. I'm using a tan color here as the base color for the hair. I'm leaving some of the tips of the hair, and I'm only doing pieces of the hair at a time because I want to make sure that the markers stay wet so I can blend the colors in nicely. And this is the highlight, you know, as if light's coming through and it's hitting the tip of the hair. I then dilute it with gray, and the reason why, now here I add gray down first, a light gray, then I add the yellow on top of that, the kind of orange yellow on top of that. The reason why I do that is because I don't want it to be too saturated. I don't want it to be like this really bright color. And I'm going to do the same thing with the red here. So I add red, and then I go back over it with brown, which adds a level of dimension of color, but also it adds like dark and then like a slightly lighter color around that. And it kind of desaturates the red, so the red isn't so bright. If I just left the red like that, it'd be very like, whoa, that's a very weird color in the hair, and it doesn't transition well. But if you go back over it with brown, then look how that now it turns into this red brown. So it's what's really cool about Copic markers is you can blend colors together. You can take two colors and mix them together and get a whole new color, and I like that. And then I come back in here with some more tans, a different color tan. I'm also going to go in with the hair because whenever I work with colors, I like to, like I said, work with the complementary colors. So the colors, if I'm using warm colors right now, I need to come back in with some cool colors, or at least a cool color to kind of diffuse everything to make it less saturated and make it look more painterly. Notice I'm also adding some of these colors right into the edge of the skin tones because they would actually reflect into there as reflective light. Here I'm actually using a dark blue color. Notice it's a complementary color. It's not on the, that is, it's, you know, on the opposite side of the color wheel. And then I'm going to come in with gray to kind of desaturate everything. And then I'm going to come back in later on. I can't remember at what point I do this at, but you'll see what I'll do is I'll add a kind of like a bluish, like a light blue color. Now I'm doing the background, and this is where I almost felt like, was this necessary? I think it was, in order to show that the hair was lit up from behind. I was going to leave a light source in here, but I figured I'll just leave it off camera, and it's not a big deal. And I'm not too worried about the little lines you can see in the background, because I'm going to be going over the background with another color anyway. Now here I'm going to start blocking in the basic idea or shapes, and I'm keeping the clothing very abstract. I don't want to go with too much detail. I think that's important because I want the interest to be on his face. So that's where I put all the detail into. Everything else I don't want to be as detailed. I want it to be more abstract, and that's just a. And that now, see, I'm adding gray into the blue, and notice when I add gray into the blue, it desaturates it. It makes it look more painterly. Now I'm going to go ahead and add gray here, and then I'm going to come back in and I'm going to add red over that. And what that does is to make the red not as saturated. Also, you can come in and add blues into the reds and things like that to. But I wanted the red to kind of stand out a little bit, and I wasn't leave it like that. But I'm like, you know what? I'm actually going to add a little bit of the yellow color. Anyway, so I'll do that later as you'll see. But now I'm coming in and adding just a little bit of blue into, now I'm adding the yellow up on top, like I said. I wanted this to look like this is where some of maybe the light is coming from, and kind of look like, kind of like this abstract kind of fire in the background. That's just something I decided to do right then and there. So I had to add some yellow into his shirt to show that that lighting is lighting up not just his hair, but is also lighting up the back rim of his clothing. Here I'm going to add kind of a darker blue color. Then I'm going to go ahead and desaturate that with gray. And I'm going to do that a lot. I'm also going to add a little bit of, in this case I added a little bit of skin tone into the clothing. Because you always want to use a variation of color. Like, don't just use all the same similar colors. You want to use colors that are opposite. So in this case, I'm using a bunch of cool colors, and so I used a warmer color, which is like a peach color there inside the clothing as well, to add color variation. And that just adds a whole new dynamic to the look, and that's how you get that kind of painterly look here. And definitely not done, and I can't remember if I show this part. I don't think I do, but I realized that his whole entire his right hand side. Anyway, I just showed there what I'm using. It's a type of I got it from Japan, imported from Japan. It's a really good, almost like I'm not sure what it is. It's not like whiteout. It definitely works kind of like a paint, but it's really, really nice and goes over everything. It'll go over watercolor, go over your Copic markers, all that stuff. This is really good, so you can come back in and add highlights and then let it dry. And what's really cool about this stuff is I noticed that the Copic markers, when I go back over it, and especially with watercolors, it's really nice. The watercolors goes right back over really nicely. But because the Copic markers are alcohol based, if you let it dry and go back over it with the Copic markers kind of blended almost. It's because it's you gotta be very careful. You gotta just do one quick stroke over it, otherwise you'll blend it right out and lose the stroke that you had just laid down. Obviously, I don't want white in the painting, or in this case in my Copic markers, not pure white. And so I go over each one of these. Now these ones I decided to go over with a cool color because they're closer to his clothing. And notice it almost like blended it out, almost like I lost the lines. And the top ones I go over with like a yellow color, since that's the highlight that they're receiving. And notice when you do that, you don't lose the strokes, but you lose some of them. If you can blend them all the way out if you wanted to where you almost completely lose a stroke, but you'll get that nice light color right back in that wasn't there before. Now I'm adding the blue, as you can see. Now watch how this changes the hair by adding the blue in there. By adding that blue color into the hair, it really diffuses it and adds a whole new dynamic to the color, and just brings this whole new level to the brown out. And I highly recommend doing it that way. But that's it right there. Now I'm going to show you the finished painting here, and we're going to kind of zoom in, and this will give you a better idea of the actual true colors versus what you saw at the very beginning there. Hey, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please go ahead and thumbs up and subscribe, and share it, because if you enjoyed it, I'm sure that somebody else will enjoy it as well. And yeah, so thank you for all your support. I appreciate it. And check out my website in the description if you want to check out and want to get a discount on my courses on how to draw and paint. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching.